Some battles aren't fought with fists, they begin with a look. Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't spoken much about his past in Austria, but one rainy afternoon in California, his phone lit up. A single word appeared on screen: Zara. And that was enough. Enough to unearth an old rhythm forged in silence, hardened by shame and sharpened by love. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Some battles aren't fought with fists, they begin with a look. Arnold Schwarzenegger hadn't spoken much about his past in Austria, but one rainy afternoon in California, his phone lit up. A single word appeared on screen: Zara. And that was enough. Enough to unearth an old rhythm forged in silence, hardened by shame and sharpened by love. They called her name last: Zara Washington. The pause before it was almost invisible, almost. Just long enough to say what no one dared speak aloud. Westfield High's gym buzzed with cheer and glitter and polite applause, but when Zara's name was announced, the temperature dipped. Girls hugged. Blonde ponytails bounced. Coaches smiled too widely, but Zara stood still, arms at her sides, spine straight like she'd been taught. Don't flinch, don't celebrate too early, and never give them what they expect. She wasn't supposed to make the team. Not at Westfield. Not in a school where tradition came in a specific shade of blonde and a fixed idea of who belonged. Her presence cracked something, not loudly, but enough to matter. Even Coach Reynolds blinked twice reading her name, like the clipboard had played a trick. But there it was, Zara Washington, in black ink. On the other side of the gym, Jake Morrison watched. Varsity quarterback, golden boy of the county, and heir to the kind of legacy that got handed down with a jersey number. He didn't clap, didn't nod, just stared. His eyes didn't blink, but something behind them moved, a tightening, a calculation. Beside him stood Tyler Knox, chewing on a toothpick, leaning into the moment like he owned it. Brandon Mills, the quiet one, hovered a step behind, trying to match their silence but not quite pulling it off. Zara picked up her gym bag. Her steps were even, deliberate. But the boys moved too, shifting just enough to form a line where there should have been a path. Not a wall, just an obstacle. 3 jerseys, 3 gazes, and 1 narrow exit. "Excuse me," she said, her voice level. Jake moved half an inch, not enough. "So you're the one they added in," he said, his tone slow, as if he were tasting each word. "I am," Zara replied, eye contact steady. Tyler's voice rose, just a bit too loud. "Coach is feeling real inclusive this year." "I earned it," she said. Brandon gave a little laugh, then quickly checked if Jake was amused. He was. Jake smiled, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "We are all about school spirit here, pride, tradition, you know." Zara tilted her head. "What does that look like to you?" "Familiar," Tyler said, stepping in just slightly. "Girls who belong." Zara's fingers tightened around her bag strap. "I understand," she said. "This school values excellence, and I intend to represent it." Jake's smile wavered just for a breath. "We'll see," he muttered. Zara walked past them. No stumbles, no second glances, but the air shifted behind her, like headlights on a dark road. She didn't speed up, didn't slow down. Outside, the parking lot was damp from the afternoon rain, the pavement slick and reflecting stadium lights. Near the edge of the lot, a matte black SUV idled quietly. No flashy trim, no bumper stickers, just solid steel, reliable and patient. She opened the door and climbed in. Arnold sat behind the wheel. He didn't speak. "He didn't need to. They don't want me on the team," she said, her eyes on the windshield. Arnold stared ahead, his face unreadable, carved in stillness. Then slowly he nodded. "Good," he said. Zara turned toward him, surprised. "If it was easy," he said, "you'd learn nothing. Let's see what they do when they realize you're not going anywhere." Zara didn't reply, but something shifted in her chest. Not comfort, not rage, something else, like the weight before a lift. Like the breath before a strike, not yet action, but the beginning of it. They drove in silence, the hum of the tires merging with the rain, and behind them the gym lights faded, but the story was just beginning. Monday morning came wrapped in fog and silence, not the kind that blanketed the world gently, but the kind that muffled every footstep, every whisper, like the school itself was holding its breath. Zara stepped through the gates of Westfield High with her chin lifted, her backpack square against her spine, and her rhythm locked in. The air was thick with looks, not words, those were still absent, but glances sharp enough to nick skin. She passed girls clutching coffee cups with pink nails, past lockers that slammed too quickly, and conversations that stopped just a second too late. They didn't say anything to her, but they were speaking all the same. Her locker had been tampered with again, not ransacked, not destroyed, just disturbed. Her books still there, but the pages were dog-eared, her mirror tilted downward, and on the inside of the door, a single note, sticky, yellow, printed in neat block letters. Don't get comfortable. No signature, no smudge of ink to trace, just a threat wrapped in false politeness. She stared at it for 3 beats, then peeled it off and folded it once, twice, before sliding it into her pocket. She turned and looked down the hallway. Jake stood by the vending machines, laughing with 2 basketball players, but his eyes met hers, just for a second, and the smile that crossed his face was cold and clean, like a blade fresh out of ice water. Zara said nothing. She shut the locker, reset the combination, and walked to class, but something had shifted. The first jab had landed. By Tuesday, the whispers had grown teeth. She heard her name in the bathrooms, followed by soft chuckles and sugar-coated venom. Girls complimented each other loudly in her presence. Your hair looks amazing, you totally nailed that routine, then went silent when she passed, like her presence disrupted the frequency. At practice, Brittany bumped into her during the pyramid drill, twice. Each time she offered an oops with a smile that didn't move her eyes. During water breaks, the others clustered near the bleachers. Zara sat alone on the end of the mat, stretching in silence. Coach Reynolds called out formations like nothing was wrong, clipboard always between her and the team, like it was a shield. But it was Thursday that changed everything. Rain had fallen all night, soaking the pavement, turning curbs and sidewalks into slick, treacherous traps. Zara approached the gym from the back entrance, her sneakers avoiding puddles, her phone in hand, typing a quick message to her father. Practice running late, be home around 6. She looked up too late. Jake, Tyler, Brandon, they were standing at the side entrance, not blocking it, just waiting. Their position forced a narrowing of space. Her heart didn't race, not yet. She kept walking. Tyler moved first, stepping into her path. Hey, superstar, he said, voice low. Zara didn't stop. Move. Jake flanked her right. What's the rush? Brandon was behind, pretending to look casual, but his eyes flicked left and right, scanning the lot, watching for teachers, witnesses. You don't look like you're enjoying practice much, Jake said, stepping closer. Zara kept her hands at her sides. I said move. Tyler grinned. We just want to make sure you feel welcome, eagle pride and all. Then came the push, not brutal, not theatrical, just perfectly timed. Zara's back foot slipped. Her balance tipped. She hit the ground hard, back landing in a puddle filled with rainwater, grime, and whatever else pooled behind the gym. Her skirt soaked instantly, her elbows scraped against the concrete. Cold water seeped into her sleeves, her breath caught, not from pain, from the chill, from the sheer humiliation of it. Oh no, Jake said, mock concerned. She slipped. A giggle came from behind. Brittany, of course, holding up her phone. Smile for the camera, she chirped. This is gonna go viral. Zara sat up slowly, her palms stinging, her uniform clinging to her like second skin. She looked at them, each of them, without blinking. And she committed the moment to memory, the laughter, the flash of the phone, the taste of rainwater in the back of her throat. Madison, one of the senior cheerleaders, rushed over. Zara, are you okay? Zara nodded, but the motion felt mechanical. Her throat was tight, her hands curled. From across the lot, Tyler called out, careful where you step next time. Jake added, some people just don't belong. Zara didn't answer. She got to her feet slowly. Her legs trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. She picked up her bag and walked into the gym, water dripping from her sleeves. That night, she didn't go straight home. She sat in the parking lot with the engine off, still in her soaked uniform. The windows fogged, her phone buzzed. A message from Arnold, you good? Zara stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, they pushed me. The reply came after a pause, one word, Come home." When she walked through the door, Arnold was already at the kitchen table, a half-full glass of water in front of him. He looked up once. His eyes scanned the mud, the cuts, the silence. "What did you do?" he asked. "I got up," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow," he said, "we begin." The basement wasn't much. Concrete floor, exposed pipes. The air carried the faint, honest smell of sweat and time. A heavy punching bag hung from an overhead beam, worn and weathered, with a line of duct tape near the bottom where the leather had split. On the far bench, a jump rope lay coiled like a quiet challenge. Zara stepped down one stair at a time, each footfall echoing against the cement like a question she hadn't yet decided how to answer. Arnold stood by the bag, rapping his knuckles with the kind of calm that didn't ask for attention. He didn't look up right away, didn't welcome her with words. He just secured the wraps, tested the tightness with a small roll of his wrists, then finally turned to her. "You sure you want this?" he asked. "I don't want to fight," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. "That's not what I asked." Zara paused, then nodded. Arnold held out a roll of cloth wraps. She reached for them, but her fingers fumbled. The material slipped once, twice. He didn't help, just watched. Eventually she got them on, uneven, loose in places, but on. "Start with the rope," he said. "I thought this was about boxing." "It is. But if you can't find rhythm here, you won't find it when someone's trying to knock your head off." Zara picked up the rope, held it like a foreign object. She stepped onto the mat and swung it once. The rope slapped once, then tangled around her shoe. "Again," Arnold said. She tried again, missed again. He didn't correct her, didn't criticize, just stood there, arms folded, watching. Minutes passed. The rope slapped the floor in erratic bursts. Her breathing grew labored. Her calves began to burn. She stumbled, cursed under her breath, started over. Sweat gathered along her forehead. Her arms ached. After the fourth restart, Arnold spoke. "You know what they called me when I got to America?" Zara didn't answer. "Nothing," he said, "because they didn't understand me. I sounded like a joke. Big muscles, heavy accent. They laughed, told me to go home." She missed again. Dropped the rope, bent over, hands on knees. "What did you do?" she asked, panting. "I learned every word. I carried a dictionary. I read billboards out loud until my voice didn't scare people anymore. Then I lifted. Every day. I turned myself into someone they couldn't ignore." Zara picked up the rope again. Her grip was firmer now, her arms steadier. She jumped. Once, twice, missed. Started again. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Arnold didn't speak again. He just let the work do the talking. When she finally collapsed onto the mat, he tossed her a towel, then walked to the bag and tapped it. "Now the bag," he said. Zara stood slowly. Her legs wobbled. Her palms tingled. She approached the punching bag and threw a punch. It landed flat. No weight, no shape. The bag barely moved. "Stop swinging," Arnold said. "It's not about power, it's about purpose." He walked behind the bag and tapped a spot with 2 fingers. "This is your moment, before the shove. Before the laugh, before the eyes roll. What do you do?" "I hit it." "Wrong, you breathe, you hold your shape, you wait." Then he jabbed, fast, sharp. The bag rocked on its chain. "You answer." Zara tried again. This time the punch landed cleaner, not strong, but clean. "Better," Arnold said. They worked in silence. The hours stretched. The basement grew warmer. The air thickened with effort. Zara's arms turned red with strain. Her knuckles ached. But the rhythm, somewhere inside her, began to emerge. Later, while sitting on the bench drinking water, Zara asked, "You ever lose your rhythm?" Arnold leaned against the far wall. His voice came low, like it belonged to a younger version of himself. "Once, when my brother died." Zara turned. "I was 24, he said. "He crashed a car drunk. I told myself I could have stopped it. I didn't drink after that. Not one drop, but the guilt, it didn't leave. So I trained, I lifted, I worked, until the rhythm came back." Zara said nothing, just listened. "I don't train fighters anymore," Arnold said, "not because I don't know how, but because most people want to fight for the wrong reasons." She looked at him and me. He paused, then said, "You're not fighting to prove anything. You're fighting because you're still standing." She looked at her hands, the red marks on her fingers, the tremble in her wrists. "I don't know if I'm built for this." You don't build strength all at once, Arnold said. You stack it, one breath at a time. The light overhead buzzed slightly, casting a dim glow on the bag. Zara stood. Faced it again. This time she didn't swing wild. She stepped, she breathed, she hit. Jab, cross, jab. Arnold nodded. That's your rhythm, he said. Don't let them take it. And beneath the concrete, the sweat, and the memory of rain-soaked pavement, a new version of Zara began to take shape. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she was learning how to answer. Friday afternoon carried the kind of silence that felt staged, the kind that hung in the hallways like a curtain pulled taut just before a performance. Zara moved through the school like a shadow with purpose. Her eyes were alert but unreadable, her posture steady, her footsteps quiet. She wasn't avoiding anyone. She was watching, observing, like a camera in human form. Jake Morrison still walked like the hallway belonged to him, still laughed too loud, still leaned against his locker with that easy arrogance that only came from never being told no. But Zara noticed the details. He arrived every morning at 7:42, parked in the same corner near the weight room, never locked his car, keys always in the console. He carried 2 phones, one for use, one for display. He wasn't just confident. He was careless. That night at dinner, Arnold set down his fork and said, "You ready?" Zara looked up. Her notebook sat between them. Black cover, no title. "I think so," she said. Arnold stood, walked to the counter, returned with a plain manila envelope. Inside was a prescription bottle, label removed, and a small bag of identical white pills. Zara stared at them. Her fingers didn't move. "I'm not planting drugs on him," she said. "You're not," Arnold replied. "You're setting a stage, letting his character do the rest. The way he carries himself, he thinks he's untouchable. People like that always slip. All you have to do is be watching when they do." Zara didn't speak. Her eyes flicked back to the bottle. "This could ruin his life," she said. "He's already trying to ruin yours," Arnold answered. "You asked what it means to hold your rhythm. Sometimes it means letting the world see what they've been ignoring." She breathed deep, slow, then nodded. "Will it work?" Arnold nodded once. "If you follow the plan." Monday came with overcast skies and a hollow wind. The cheerleaders were dismissed early for uniform fitting. Zara slipped away from the group, cut across the side lot, and ducked behind the vending machine shed. She knew Jake's pattern: 20 minutes in the weight room, then 5 in the locker room. His car would be alone, unwatched, untouched. She moved quickly, not fast, just decisive. Opened the door, slid into the passenger seat. The air inside smelled like cologne, protein powder, and ego. She reached into her bag, pulled the bottle, slid it just barely under the seat. Just enough to be visible. The loose pills went into the cup holder, right beside a crumpled protein bar wrapper and a pack of gum. She didn't linger, closed the door, wiped the handle, walked away. 2 hours later, the hotline lit up. Anonymous tip. A car, a student athlete, possible possession. Coach Reynolds was furious. Principal Martinez called in the resource officer. Practice stopped mid-drill. Jake, mid-sprint, was pulled aside. "What is this about?" he asked. "Just a routine check," Deputy Collins said. Jake hesitated, but handed over his keys. The moment the bottle came into view, everything changed. "I've never seen that before," Jake said, his voice sharp with surprise. "Possession is still possession," Martinez said. Players stared. Phones emerged. One recorded in secret. Jake's face flushed red, then pale, then red again. Zara stood on the edge of the field, stretching with the others. Calm, measured. Madison leaned over. "What's happening?" "Looks like Jake's in trouble," Zara said. "Drug trouble? Seems that way." By morning, Jake was suspended pending investigation. By afternoon, 2 colleges pulled their offers. That evening, his name was trending under Fall From Eagle. The golden boy had fallen, but Zara didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She went home, took off her uniform, sat at the kitchen table. Arnold poured her tea. She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. They were steady, too steady. "I thought I'd feel more," she said. "You do," Arnold replied, "but it's buried under something heavier." "What's that?" "Responsibility." He leaned back. "This wasn't a win," he said. "It was a message. And now they know, the bell's been rung." Zara nodded. Her fingers tightened around the mug, and she didn't say it out loud, but she knew it was only round one. The fallout came fast. By Wednesday, Jake's locker was a shrine to silence. His nameplate had been removed. His teammates walked quieter, like someone had stolen the rhythm from their steps. But while the noise faded around him, another presence began to rise. Tyler Knox, not as polished, not as careful, but louder, meaner. He laughed too hard in the cafeteria, pushed his chair back louder in class, walked through the hallways like a storm waiting to break. He didn't say Zara's name, but she could feel his eyes like static on the back of her neck. Then came the shoulder check. Hard, deliberate, no apology, no smirk, just pressure, just warning. That night at dinner, Zara recounted it like a footnote. Tyler bumped me today. Arnold said nothing for a beat, then asked, "How much do you know about him?" Zara pulled her black notebook from her backpack, flipped to the tab labeled Tyler. Lives east side, dad's a contractor. Mom works part-time at a dentist's office. One scholarship offer to a state school. Without football, he probably can't go. Arnold nodded, and Zara tapped the page. He's been selling vapes to freshmen behind the gym. $20 profit each. Cash only. Arnold leaned back. Quiet, you get proof. Zara unlocked her phone. 2 videos, one from Monday, one from this morning. Same time, same spot. Arnold took a long breath. Then said, "You know, when I was his age, I stole a pair of boxing gloves, couldn't afford them. My father said I didn't need them, but I needed to matter, so I took them." Zara looked at him. "You're saying we let him go?" "I'm saying desperation makes people dangerous, and guilt doesn't always change them." Zara looked down at the phone in her hand, thought about the puddle, the laughter, the cold. "I want to stop him," she said. "But I don't want to become him." "Then do it clean," Arnold said. "Do it smart." The next day, Zara skipped lunch, went to the art building instead. From the second floor, she had a clear shot of the gym's rear entrance. At exactly 12:18, Tyler showed up. 2 younger students followed, nervous, new. He handed them vape pens. They handed him cash. Zara hit record every second, every angle. She added timestamps, then pulled his Venmo history, public sloppy. Labeled gift and Hoko prep. She compiled it all, packaged it neat, and sent it anonymously to the front office. By third period, the principal had pulled Tyler out of class. By fourth, a search turned up a dozen devices and over $200 in unaccounted cash. "I've been set up," Tyler yelled. "Someone's targeting us," but no one stepped in, not even Brandon. By last bell, the story had spread. Another star fallen, another scholarship in danger. Zara passed Tyler's locker on her way out. It was still open, empty, his jersey folded inside like a memory no one wanted anymore. When she got home, Arnold was already at the table. This time, no tea, just silence. She dropped her bag, sat. "I did it," she said. "I know," he replied. "I thought I'd feel proud." Arnold didn't speak. "I don't," she added. "I just feel tired." He leaned forward, hands folded. "Do you know why your arms shake after a long match?" Zara shook her head. "Because your body doesn't know if it survived. That's what adrenaline does. That's what pressure costs." She stared at the table. "I keep thinking about his mom, his dad. Did they even see this coming?" "Justice is never simple," Arnold said, "but it's always necessary." Zara nodded, but her throat stayed tight. "I don't know if I can do it again." "You can," he said. "Because there's still one left." She closed her eyes, saw Brandon's laugh, heard his silence, watched him flinch behind the others. The follower, the quiet one. "I'll need time," she whispered. "Take it," Arnold said, "but don't wait too long. Because in fights like this, hesitation doesn't just get you hurt, it gets you cornered." It started with a shift in the air, not fear, not even tension, just something wrong in the rhythm of the night. Zara walked home the same way she always did, hoodie up, earbuds in, one foot in front of the other. She moved like someone who belonged on the sidewalk, confident, controlled. But her eyes were working overtime, checking shadows, scanning windows, glancing at reflections in passing cars. That's when she saw it. A black pickup truck, slow, steady, matching her pace half a block behind. She didn't run. Arnold had been clear. Never let them choose the battlefield. She made a right onto a better-lit street, headed for the houses with porch lights and wind chimes and people still awake. But the truck turned too, same speed, same distance. She heard the doors before she saw them. 3 slams, fast footsteps. Then a voice. Zara, she turned. Jake, Tyler, Brandon, standing under the flickering glow of a busted streetlight. Jake's jaw was clenched, his face thinner than before. The shine was gone, but his eyes were louder than ever. Tyler stood twitchy, like a fuse already burning. Brandon looked smaller, like someone who had just realized they weren't supposed to be here. "We just want to talk," Jake said. "That why you brought back up?" Jake stepped forward. "You set us up. You think you can just walk around like nothing happened?" Zara's hands stayed loose at her sides. "I didn't ruin your lives. You did that yourselves." Tyler's voice cut through the dark. "No, you did this. You made us look like animals." Zara looked at him. "You made yourselves look like that. I just turned on the lights." Brandon took a step forward. His voice cracked. "Why are you doing this?" Zara's gaze landed on him. "Do you think I wanted this? I wanted to cheer, that's it. But when someone tries to take your breath away, your choice is simple. Hold it or use it." Jake's face twisted. "Let's finish this." He moved first. Fast, a reach, a grab, she stepped left. His hand missed. She pivoted, elbow to his ribs. Clean, controlled, he staggered. Tyler charged next. Lower, harder, she sidestepped. Used his own weight, clipped his knee. He hit the ground, rolled, snarled. Brandon stayed frozen. Jake got up, his breath heavy, his right hand shook. Then something glinted, a knife, small but sharp. His grip wasn't sure, but the blade caught the light. "You want to act tough?" Jake hissed. "Let's see how tough you are now." Zara's mind didn't spin, it focused. Instincts turned to instruction. Knife equals range. Blade equals timing. Control the wrist. Don't rush. Wait, he lunged. She didn't move back. She moved in, grabbed the wrist, twisted. The knife hit the pavement with a metallic clatter. She kicked it behind her. Jake howled, swung with his free hand. She blocked, stepped inside, palm to chest. He stumbled again. Tyler rose, nose bleeding, eyes wild. He rushed. She jabbed, once. Twice, a hook to the ribs. He folded. Brandon stepped forward, hesitant, reaching for her arm. "Don't," she said, but he did. Reflex answered. She twisted, broke his grip, pushed him back. No punch, just warning. Then the sirens far off. Rising fast, Jake looked around, panicked. Tyler tried to stand but dropped back to his knees. Brandon backed away slowly, shaking his head like he couldn't believe the scene. Zara stood in the center of it, steady, breathing. The knife lay 3 feet away, useless now. The first cruiser pulled up, red and blue washed over the sidewalk. Officer Martinez stepped out, hand on her hip. "Nobody move," she said. Zara raised her hands. "They jumped me." "He had a knife." Tyler coughed blood. She started it. Brandon's voice came quiet. "No, she didn't." The second officer collected the knife, bagged it, wrote something down. "Whose is this?" Jake said nothing, but his eyes told the truth. Another cruiser. Then an ambulance, flashing lights. Medics checked faces, took notes, measured bruises. Then Arnold arrived. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He walked like a man who'd seen worse and knew the ending already. He made eye contact with the officer. Then looked at Zara. "She okay?" "She handled it," Martinez said. "Self-defense." "Clean." Arnold nodded once, then stepped beside her. Didn't touch her, just waited. "You follow the rules?" he asked. "I stayed in the light," she said. "I moved first with my eyes, not my fists. I waited for the swing in their mind." He gave the faintest smile. "That's my girl." They loaded Jake into the car, then Tyler. Brandon didn't resist, didn't speak. He just looked at Zara like he wanted to say something he didn't know how to say. When they were gone, Zara looked up at Arnold. "I didn't want to hurt them." "You didn't," he said. "You stopped them." Her breath slowed. And for the first time in weeks, she felt it. Not triumph, not justice, just release. The fight was over, and she had not been broken. The courtroom felt colder than outside, not because of the temperature, because of the silence. Marble walls, polished floors, the kind of place where sound didn't echo, it vanished. The judge read the charges slowly, each word like a weight dropped from a height. Assault, conspiracy, possession of a deadly weapon. And the one that made everyone shift in their seats, targeting a student based on race. Jake sat hunched at the defense table, his jacket replaced by a gray jumpsuit, his hands clenched into fists he couldn't throw. Tyler looked dazed. Lost, Brandon sat up straight, eyes forward, as if trying to stay invisible. The evidence was laid out clean. The video, the threats, the knife, the pattern, No one interrupted, no one argued. The room had already made up its mind. Then they called her name. Zara stepped forward. Her uniform was pressed, her voice steady, her shoes silent against the tile. I didn't want any of this, she said. I didn't want a fight. I wanted to cheer. I wanted to belong. But when someone tries to erase your voice, you either disappear or you speak louder. She turned, looked at each of them, not with hate, not with triumph, with clarity. You thought pushing me down would make me quit. But all it did was teach me how to rise. She stepped back, no applause, just stillness, the kind that means people are listening. The judge delivered the sentence. Jake got 4 years, Tyler 3. Brandon 18 months with community service for cooperation. There was no reaction, just the sound of pens moving and lives changing. Outside, reporters gathered, microphones, flashes, voices asking for headlines. One woman leaned in. What would you say to other students going through something like this? Zara paused, just for a breath. Don't let them steal your rhythm, she said. That's how they win. A few days later, she stood on a stage in front of the entire school. The banner behind her read Westfield Anti-Harassment Week. Her name had traveled further than she ever expected. But today wasn't about being a symbol. Today she was just Zara. Strength doesn't always show up in fists, she said. Sometimes it's in the breath you hold when they want you to break. Sometimes it's in standing still when they expect you to run. And sometimes it's in remembering who you are when they try to make you forget. The applause came slow, then rose, not wild, not loud, but real. Backstage, Madison pulled her into a hug. You did it. Zara nodded. We did. That evening she returned to the basement. The bag still hung from the beam. The wraps sat folded on the bench. Arnold was there, quiet, waiting. You want to train? He asked. Zara shook her head. I just wanted to see it. He nodded. I never thanked you, she said. You don't have to, I know, but I will anyway. She walked to the center of the room, let the silence settle, then turned back to him. Why didn't you tell anyone who you were? Arnold gave a small shrug. Didn't matter. But you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. Maybe, but to you, I'm just the guy who kept time. Zara frowned. I don't get it. He nodded toward the bag, the rope, the scuffed mat. You learned how to breathe through chaos. That's rhythm. That's what I gave you. The rest, that's yours. Zara stood still, let the words land, then turned toward the stairs. What do I do now? She asked. Arnold looked at her, calm, certain. Whatever you want, he said, because you're not fighting to prove anything anymore. You're just living like someone who already won. And as she stepped into the evening air, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned.